What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And today, we have ourselves a lot, I repeat, a lot to get into, as we have so much volleyball to cover, as we had 9 upsets in the NCAA men's volleyball world last week. 9. I don't even know where to start. CSUN beat Stanford in 5 on Friday. I also covered Long Beach State, which they narrowly escaped against Loyola. Concordia beat Loyola last Thursday. GCU beat UC Irvine twice. Penn State upset UCLA in 4 last Saturday. There's just so many upsets. We also have some NVA news and some NVA announcements from yours truly, Teran Rodriguez. Also, we have Week 6 of the NCAA men's volleyball season to go over, and we have some NCAA women's volleyball transfer news to go over, and we have the AVP schedule for 2023. Hand me a volleyball, set the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 180 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let's get started. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. If you are listening live on Spreaker, you can follow IE Sports Radio on several different social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. We also have a Facebook page for people that still use Facebook, as you just got to type in IE, then sports, then radio in the search bar, enter, and then click on our little icon that says IE Sports Radio, and then poof, you're following us, liking us, and you'll get all your sports updates from there. Also, we have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and once you go there, you will see a Patreon link at the top, which starts at $5 a month once you start donating. This will get you a shout out from all of our shows, including this one, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to IESRU, our podcasting university, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Because for the past 8 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans. And with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Key to the Gate, Marcus Losgrid, and a donor that wishes to remain anonymous. All right, now let's get this show underway. So this week is Super Bowl week in the NFL. And guess what? I'm not here to talk about that. Yep, this is a volleyball show. If you were hoping to get some Super Bowl talk out of me, I'm here to disappoint you. I'm not going to talk about that. So, jumping over to the NCAA men's volleyball side of things, we had, like I said, 9 upsets. And the upsets actually started on Wednesday. There were so many upsets. And Larry thinks he's so funny. He says, UC Santa Barbara is the best men's volleyball team out there. Well, they came in on a 6-game losing streak. And yes, they were the ones that pulled off an upset, but we'll get into them a little bit later, but for right now, the upset started on Wednesday when, get this, Vanguard University, an NAIA school, defeated CSUN on the road. Vanguard won the first set, never trailed, though it was tight toward the end. 25-22 was the first set. Second set, Vanguard, they didn't have too much trouble in the second set. They eventually pulled out the second set win 25-20, and then the third set, they won at 25-17. So I totally forgot that Vanguard played Northridge. Now, keep in mind, Vanguard is one of the better NAIA schools, so it's not an ultimate upset, but it's a little surprising just because Vanguard, you never really see an NAIA team beat an NCAA Division I school. But if you all remember when I had CJ Shearer, the Life University men's volleyball coach, on the show, we talked some NAIA volleyball, and Vanguard was one of the teams that was pretty good this season, and one team to watch for. As Vanguard was led by Will Anderson, as he had 14 kills and he hit .417. So Vanguard does have some stud players like Will Anderson and Kyle Enema, who had 11 kills, he hit .364. Fun fact about those two players, they're actually junior college products. Will Anderson won a state championship ring with OCC last season, and then Kyle Enema won a state championship with Long Beach City back in 2019. Yes, 2019, before COVID-19 happened, but I digress. So as a team, Vanguard hit .359, and they had 4 service aces, and they outblocked CSUN by 10.5 to CSUN's 4.5. So that's a big yikes for CSUN. CSUN was led by Kyla Hobitz, who had 11 kills, but CSUN as a whole hit only 197. And they only had 17 digs compared to Vanguard's 24. And while they missed fewer serves, they only had 3 service aces. But Vanguard only had 1 more ace than them. So for Vanguard, it's a huge win for their program, just because they're not that old of a program. This is only, they originated in 2020, and this is 2023, so this is only their 4th season as a varsity team. So it's a good win for Vanguard, but for CSUN, I don't know how you lose that one. So, yeah. And then we got to jump on over to Thursday as we welcome Adam Karnick in the live chat room on Spreaker. He says, "Hello, Teran." All right, so Adam, I hate to tell you this, but Loyola of Chicago suffered their first loss of the season, losing to Concordia Irvine. So I was watching bits and pieces of this match, but I was just so... Okay, long story short, last week I said Concordia was going to be the biggest trap game for Loyola, just because Loyola has not really beaten anyone of noting this season. So unfortunately for Loyola, they kind of fell in the pit trap of being upset on the road in the West Coast against the Eagles, as Concordia took the first 2 sets 25-22 and then 25-16. Then Loyola showed some signs of life. They took the third set 25-22, but then the fourth set could have gone either way, as Concordia pretty much led most of the way. Loyola tried to get within striking distance, but Uriel Batista, that dude, I talked about that dude when I covered the Concordia-Princeton match, and he was a beast, as he eventually had the match-clinching kill to give Concordia the fourth set 25-21, which handed Loyola their first loss of the season. And it was Concordia's biggest win of the season, just because they haven't really had too many big-time wins, and they were kind of long yearning for a big win right there. So for Concordia to pull off that win, to beat the number 12 team in the nation, and to hand Loyola its first loss is quite impressive, if you ask me. So, unfortunately for the Ramblers, I don't know. I think they just got overwhelmed on the road. And I talked with John Hawks the day after, before his team played Long Beach State. He said, well, unfortunately, they played horrible. That's all I got to say. And you got to look at Concordia's wins. They came in with a record of 3-3, and unfortunately, their 3 wins consist of Keanu, which I don't even think that's NCAA Division 1 and 2. Vanguard, which is NAIA, and Menlo. And then their other 3 losses came at the hands of Princeton and then UC Irvine twice. So for Loyola, this is kind of a bad loss. Don't get me wrong, Concordia is a good team, and Uriel Batista is a heck of a player. However, I hate to tell you this, but Loyola just looked flat. They just did not look good, and they were kind of two-dimensional, maybe even one-dimensional for the most part, as Concordia was led by Uriel Batista, who had 15 kills. While he did have 9 hitting errors, he made up for that as he had 10 digs. He also had 1 service ace, and that dude was just all over the place. Johnny Anselmo had 14 kills. He hit .545, which was huge. Scott Montez had 11 kills, and Gil Harold also had 9 kills, and he hit 750. So for Concordia, they got efficient nights, and even MPSF Bias or Jonathan Bates said it on Twitter. When Concordia they were super efficient offensively, as they had 9+ kills, and I basically described as Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. Like, Uriel Batista can have himself a big night, but if the other players are getting involved, just like how the Golden State Warriors have Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Jordan Poole, and all those other playmakers, it makes the team a whole lot better. I kind of describe Concordia as Golden State. And this night basically proved it. They also had 5 aces. They only missed 10 serves, which Riley Salmon, their head coach, was big on after the Princeton match. And they only allowed 6 aces from Loyola, as they were led by Parker Van Buren, who had 19 kills. Cole Schlotthauer had 9 kills. Van Buren was the only player in double digits in terms of kills for Loyola, as after Schlotthauer, they had Jimmy Meinhardt and Demas Meyer, who each had 6 kills. Each had 6 kills. And the fourth set, Loyola only hit 91, which is bad. It's not good. That's under 10%. So for Loyola, it was just not their night. Also on Thursday, we had Ball State falling to BYU. Number 8 Ball State falling to BYU. So this was kind of an interesting match. Ball State took the first set in close fashion. And normally most teams roll over after losing that first set. But not BYU. They took the second set in very close fashion as well, 25-23. First set was 26-24. Third set, BYU took it with a little bit more ease as they won the third set, 25-21. Then the fourth set, it was back and forth. There were 17 ties, 8 lead changes, but the Cougars took that fourth set 27-25 as BYU was led by Mix Raminis, who had 16 kills. Luke Benson had 15 kills. Capono Brown had 13 kills. And BYU hit 287, so overall for BYU, it was an efficient night for them. Surprisingly for Ball State, they had quite a number of statistics go their way. They had 12 blocks, they hit 353, and they barely outdug their opponent, which I guess is cool, but they missed 16 serves. BYU, on the other hand, they only missed 7, and BYU also had 9 service aces, so Ball State was led by, I'm going to mispronounce this guy's name, Tina Ishi Davazocheva. Tina Ishi Davazocheva. He had 24 kills. He hit 476. Caleb Jennis had 19 kills. So for Ball State, it's good that they have other players stepping up. So for Ball State, it was just not their night. But they did manage to win the second matchup against BYU, as they won that one also in 4 sets. They won at 24-26, 25-23, 25-19, and 25-23. Tinaish Davazocheva had 19 kills. Dyer Ball actually had 12 kills. Vanis Buckholz had 8 kills, no hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .667. Caleb Jens didn't really have his best night against BYU, but he didn't really need to because Ball State had other players stepping up. But back to the Thursday match. It was kind of an interesting match just because Ball State had every good statistic except for service errors. Like, they had over double the service errors that BYU had. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. For Ball State, they haven't really had the best of wins. Like, they came in on a 4-game winning streak, yes, but those 4 wins were not against notable programs. And heck, they even had to go 5 with Tusculum, which is kind of interesting if you ask me. So, and in the chat room, Larry is talking about why UC Santa Barbara is ranked ahead of CSUN in the most recent AVCA coaches poll rankings. Well, that's because of strength of schedule. I mean, CSUN hasn't really beaten anyone too great outside of Stanford, and that loss to Vanguard kind of puts them behind the 8 ball. Meanwhile, even though Santa Barbara has lost quite a number of games, they have notable wins, one against USC and the other against Pepperdine. So, to answer your question, Larry, of why Santa Barbara is ahead of CSUN, strength of schedule. Just saying. All right, now you got to jump on over to Friday. So Friday, we had Grand Canyon beating UC Irvine. Number 9, Grand Canyon taking on UC Irvine. So UC Irvine coming off that loss to BYU. Grand Canyon still undefeated. The Lopes defended their home court. First set, Grand Canyon won it 25-19. Same with the second set. And then the third set, UC Irvine just stomped all over the Lopes, 25-12. But then the fourth set, Grand Canyon never trailed, and even though the fourth set was tight, it was pretty much all Grand Canyon. They won at 25-22, and this just goes to show that the Lopes are for real, as they were led by Jackson Hickman, who had 13 kills. Christian Janke had 10 kills. Rico Wardlow added 9 kills. And we also got to see Camden Gianni, as he had 5 kills. And then it looks like there were other players that got involved in terms of the kill party, as Jonah Gilbert had 5 kills as well. Grand Canyon hit a blistering 415, and they did not have a set where they hit under 300, which is mind-boggling if you ask me. They also had one more service ace than UC Irvine, and UC Irvine only had 16 digs, which is no bueno. And surprisingly enough, Grand Canyon won despite only having 5 blocks, which was the same number of blocks that UC Irvine had. Though Grand Canyon had 28 digs, 7 of which went to Nick Slight, who had 7. UC Irvine was led by Francesco Sani, who had 13 kills, while Hilir Heno had 11 kills. William Darcy had 9 kills, which I kind of find interesting that they're implementing him into the lineup. So, kind of cool if you ask me. And then Doug Dahm added 5 kills. UC Irvine surprisingly hit 333, but other than that, that's kind of where the buck stops, as they just could not dig a ball to save their life. And it wasn't just Friday that they lost. It was also on Saturday that the Anteaters lost, as first set, just like the previous one, Grand Canyon took it 25-21, but then UC Irvine showed signs of life. Second set, they won 25-21. Third set, they won 25-19. And the fourth set was just so back and forth. It looked as if UC Irvine was going to win, but then Grand Canyon came back, and then UC Irvine tried to go for the throat, but Grand Canyon just escaped with that fourth set, 29-27. Then in the fifth set, Grand Canyon outlasted those Anteaters, 15-13, as Jackson Hickman coming up big for the Lopes, 19 kills. Christian Janke, 17 kills. Rico Wardlow, 10 kills. Camden Gianni had 7 kills. Cameron Thorne had 8 kills. Grand Canyon as a team hit 333, which was quite impressive. They won despite missing 29 serves. That's so surprising. That's UCLA numbers right there. The fact that Grand Canyon won that match despite missing 29 serves is quite astounding. And they also got outdug 40-29. But one of the keys was kind of them out-blocking Grand Canyon, as they out-blocked them 13-12, which was just barely, but still. UC Irvine, on the other hand, was led by Hilir Heno, who had 18 kills. He hit 438. Francesco Sani had 16 kills, but he had 10 service errors. Cole Gillis had 10 kills. Overall, UC Irvine has kind of been stuck in a little bit of a rut, as unfortunately for them, they sadly went 0 for 2, and unfortunately for them, it just wasn't meant to be. Now, this match was actually played in the small gymnasium at Grand Canyon, as the other one was being used for men's basketball. So, there's that right there. Then jumping back over to Friday, we have... I did not know this was an upset. I forgot this match even was played. We had George Mason, who came into this match winless, as they upset then number 14 Lewis. So, first set, George Mason, they came out guns a-blazing. This was played at George Mason University, as they won it 25-18. Second set was a little bit tighter, as I say that little bit quite loosely, as it still could have gone either way, but the Patriots took that second set 25-23. Then the third set, George Mason took it 25-19, despite it being fairly close for the most part. George Mason was led by Liam French, who had 11 kills. Omar Hoyos and Jack Bowles each had 9 kills. As a team, George Mason hit 367, and they outblocked their opponent 9-6, which is cool. And they also had 8 service errors compared to Lewis's 0 service errors, which is a big ouch. Lewis, on the other hand, they were led by Max Roque, who had 13 kills. Syver Drolsum had 9 kills as Lewis hit 271 on the night. But again, it just wasn't their night. This was kind of a bad loss for Lewis, just because I talked with John Hawks, the Loyola coach, before the match against Long Beach State, and honestly, I expected better from Lewis. I even said that Lewis is underrated, and he even said Lewis was underrated. So that's a big ouch right there for Lewis right there to lose on the road against a winless George Mason team. But I guess it's any given night when it comes to men's volleyball. So unfortunately for the Flyers, it wasn't meant to be, but it is what it is. Then we're going to jump on over to Friday's match. Continuing with Friday's match, we have number 6 Stanford getting upset by CSUN. And for me, I think CSUN beating Stanford is much better than kind of Pepperdine's upset. And CSUN's little body of work is a little bit better than... Santa Barbara's schedule obviously has been more brutal just because they've played a lot of matches, and they've had some matches not go their way. But to Stanford CSUN, this was played at the Premier America Credit Union Arena as Stanford took the first set 25-21. Then the second set, I was kind of interested in this as CSUN took that second set 26-24, 19 ties and 6 lead changes. Third set, Stanford took it 25-22. Within the fourth set, CSUN just really laid down the wood against Stanford, taking the fourth set 25-18. And then the fifth set, Stanford was up 11-10, but then CSUN went on a 5-2 run to take that fifth set 15-13, which was quite impressive. 11 ties in that set. CSUN was led by Kyle Hobus, who had 21 kills. Griffin Walters had 17 kills. Lorenzo Bertozzi had 12 kills as CSUN hit 273. Stanford was led by Will Rotman, who had 21 kills. Stanford as a team had 4 different players in double digits in terms of kills. Theo Snowy had 13 kills. Kevin Lamp had 11 kills. Ethan Hill, 10 kills. Stanford had a slight better hitting percentage than CSUN as they hit 279. They had more service aces than CSUN, though their service errors kind of hindered them. They also outblocked CSUN as well, but the one stat that Stanford got tripped up in was digs, as CSUN had 61 digs compared to Stanford's 52, as Talon Cook had 20 digs, Donovan Constable had 13 digs, and Bertozzi had 11 digs. Stanford, on the other hand, had 14 digs from Justin Louis. Nathan Leitsky had 11 digs as he came back into the... I think Nathan Leitsky was not in the lineup against Penn State. And then Kevin Lamp had 10 digs. So for Stanford, they've played a lot of 5-set matches, and eventually those 5-setters were eventually going to come back to haunt them. So for CSUN, it's a good win for them just because that loss to Vanguard kind of leaves a bad taste in their mouth. And that Vanguard loss is probably the reason why CSUN is not ranked ahead of Santa Barbara. And also the fact that Santa Barbara has played a tough schedule. And that's a perfect segue to go into this next little upset. Santa Barbara versus Pepperdine. Number 5 Pepperdine against number 15 Santa Barbara, as the Waves took the first set 25-21. Actually, before I continue, the two actually played a match previously at Pepperdine, and Pepperdine swept Santa Barbara 25-23, 25-21, and 25-21. Now back to the match at Santa Barbara. Pepperdine took the first set 25-21. Santa Barbara returned the favor by taking the second set in the same set scores. Pepperdine won the third set 25-16, and I'm thinking, okay, well, Pepperdine can't possibly lose this. And then I just really focused more on the Long Beach State Loyola match. But then the fourth set, Santa Barbara gave Pepperdine a whooping in that fourth set, 25-11. And then in the fifth set, Santa Barbara outlasted Pepperdine 15-12 as the Gauchos completed their upset, and it was their first biggest win of the season. And they also snapped their 7-match losing streak. So it's a good win for the Gauchos just because it's going to help them stay in the top 15. Even though honestly, their strength of schedule is great. It's so much better than CSUN's, but they just haven't really been able to pull off the wins. They do have that one 5-set loss to Stanford and all those other, and then they also have a few other 5-set losses. They lost to USC in 5. They lost to UCLA in straight sets both times. They even lost to Lincoln Memorial in 5, which I don't know if we can call that a quality win, but to each his own. Anyway, Gauchos were led by Dane Chalmers, who had 17 kills. He had 0 hitting errors, and the dude hit .680. That dude was legit. And I'm not just saying that just because I covered him in high school. The dude was basically outstanding. So, great job to Dane Chalmers. Owen Berg and Ryan Wilcox each had 13 kills. Also, I have to give a shout out to Ryan Wilcox as he surpassed 1,000 career kills, as Wilcox also had 12 digs to go along with his 13 kills. As a team, UC Santa Barbara hit .402. Now, for Pepperdine, if you're allowing your opponent to hit over .402, you're not going to win any matches. Another big stat that Pepperdine got outdone in was the blocks, as they got outblocked 9-4, which that's a big ouch right there. And they got out-aced 7-5. As Pepperdine was led by Jalen Jasper, who had 26 kills and a .242 hitting percentage. Jacob Steele had 11 kills. Joe DeLuzio had 10 kills. Akin Akinwumi had 8 kills. As a team, Pepperdine hit .298, which is not bad, but the fourth set they hit -42, which is a big oof right there. Trey Cole had 14 digs, and Jasper had 10 digs, while I already mentioned Wilcox had 12 digs. So overall for Pepperdine, it was just not their night. It is tough to beat the same team twice in 1 week, but and also it's so tough to win at UC Santa Barbara just because the gym floor is actually so close to the bleachers. I've never been to UC Santa Barbara, but I have been told that UC Santa Barbara's court is so close to the bleachers, so it's not like playing in other gymnasiums which have the court not even close to the bleachers, but I digress on that. And then closing out the NCAA men's volleyball week number 5, we have the Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge, or Pac-12 Big Ten Challenge, as get used to seeing USC and UCLA in the Big Ten, or playing Big Ten opponents, because they're going to be playing them eventually after the academic year next year. So on Friday, we had UCLA beating Ohio State, or number 2 UCLA beating number 13 Ohio State in 4, 25-22, 25-20, 23-25, 25-23. UCLA won it on a walk-off block from Ito David and Merrick McHenry, as UCLA was led by Ito David, who had 18 kills. He hit .452. Ethan Champlin had 14 kills. He hit .303, and he had 3 aces. Ohio State was led by Samuel Clark, who had 18 kills, and he hit .368, while Jacob Pasteur had 13 kills. So that was that first match in the Pac-12 Big Ten Challenge. Then we had number 10 USC taking on number 4 Penn State. Penn State won the match 30-28, 25-20, 23-25, and 25-18. Penn State was led by Brett Wildman, who had 16 kills and 9 digs. Cal Fisher, who was making his season debut, had 13 kills. He hit .429, and he also had 9 digs. McCall Cowell had 11 kills. He hit .429. And those 3 players that I just mentioned, Fisher, Cowell, and Wildman, each had 2 service aces. Cole Bogner had 44 assists and 12 digs to go along in the win for Penn State, as USC was led by Dylan Klein, who had 20 kills. Another great night for Dylan Klein, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough, as also Simon Gallus had 15 kills. But unfortunately for the Trojans, it was not meant to be. They unfortunately were not able to get the win, but it's all good. Then for the second day, we had number 10 USC taking on number 13 Ohio State in the third match of day number 2 of the Pac-12 Big Ten Challenge. So I said that Ohio State might have had a chance to beat USC. And to the dismay of USC fans, Ohio State did, as the Buckeyes won the match 25-19, 20-25, 25-20, and 25-18, as the Buckeyes were led by Jacob Pasteur, who had 18 kills. He had a hitting percentage of .343. Samuel Clark had 10 kills. Shane Wetzel had 8 kills. It's good to see Ohio State not having that two-headed monster. They got to get other players involved, as Ohio State hit .322 in the match. Despite getting outblocked, they outdug USC 45-32, as Noah Plattfoot led the team in digs with 9, as well as Jacob Pasteur. USC was led by Simon Gallus, who had 14 kills. Dylan Klein had a quiet night as he had 7 kills, as well as Lucas Frasrand. USC only hit .239, and while they did outblock Ohio State, the digs were kind of an issue. I kind of figured that Ohio State was going to probably get the better of USC, just because USC is so young, and Ohio State returns a good portion of their players from last season, so it's no surprise that the Trojans were bested by the Buckeyes. Then we have the last match, and this is the last of the upsets right here, as we had the last match of the Pac-12 Big Ten Challenge, as we had number 2 UCLA taking on number 4 Penn State. Penn State took the first set 25-21. In that first set, while there were 15 ties, and while UCLA controlled the first half of that set, they missed 10 serves. And when you're facing UCLA, expect a lot of missed serves, as UCLA had 10 missed serves, as they missed half their serves in that first set alone, and they lost it 25-21. So that's just downright sad for UCLA. But then in the second set, UCLA reestablished control. They won the second set 25-18, but they had no more control after that. They never led in the third and fourth set. Penn State won that third set 25-19, and they won the fourth set 25-17, handing UCLA its first loss of the season. So poor UCLA, poor Bruins, as the Nittany Lions paid them back for last year. Penn State was led by Cal Fisher, who had 15 kills, and he hit .367, and he also had 3 service aces, and he also had 6 digs. McCall Cowell had 10 kills. Brett Wildman had 3 service aces and 6 kills. Owen Rose had 7 kills. Penn State hit .317, which wasn't bad, and they outblocked UCLA 10.5-7. And they only missed 14 serves, which isn't too terrible, but it is what it is. UCLA was led by Ito David, who had 12 kills. J.R. Norris IV had 11 kills. As a team, UCLA still hit .295, which wasn't bad, but that fourth set was just ugly for them. Straight up ugly. One person who I am seeing more in the lineup is Andrew Rowan, who is only a freshman. Now, the dude is actually very talented. The dude serves really tough, and he's only a setter, and he's only a freshman, and this dude is really good. So the fact that we're seeing John Sparrow input him into the lineup is quite something. So keep an eye out for Andrew Rowan. I think he has potential. I mentioned him as one of my players to watch for in my UCLA preview. So I think for the Bruins, they could be utilizing him more, as they didn't really utilize him in the previous match. They utilized him a little bit in the previous match, but I think Sparrow is now experimenting with Rowan at the setter position, which I think is scary, just because he's only a freshman and the dude is posting some decent numbers. So that right there is that for all of the upsets that happened. So overall, it was just a great weekend, but it didn't stop there. So flashback over to Friday, I actually covered the Long Beach State Loyola men's volleyball match, and this was quite the match. This one almost wound up being an upset, as Loyola took the first set 25-23. It looked like Long Beach State was going to take that set. They were up 21-20, and then Loyola just took the lead from there as they went on a 5-2 run to take that set. In the second set, it was looking like Loyola was going to take that set. They were up 15-11 at one point after a hitting error from Spencer Olivier of Long Beach State. And I saw that Alan Knipe went to his bench, and he went to Nathan Harlan, and he subbed in Spencer Olivier. And I don't know what he said, but he said something, you did it again, or something along those lines. So I don't know what happened with Spencer Olivier. He didn't really have the greatest night, and don't take my word for it. All I just know is that Nathan Harlan came in, and he did really great. He's normally a serving specialist, but he put up some good numbers, and he was very clutch for Long Beach State. So, as I just mentioned, Long Beach State was down 15-11, but then they turned the tide with Nathan Harlan's really tough serving, and eventually they took that second set 25-21. Then the third set, Long Beach State established control fairly early and often as they won the third set 25-19. Fourth set, it looked as if Long Beach State was going to end the match in 4, but Loyola came up big down the stretch as Cole Schlotthauer as well as Parker Van Buren had some big-time kills, and eventually Loyola took that fourth set 25-23. Then in the fifth set, at the halfway point, it was just back and forth between those two teams as they had the most ties in the match in that set as Loyola led 8-7 at the side change. Long Beach State eventually went up 12-10 after a low kill from Nathan Harlan. I think it was like a down ball kill, but Loyola was not ready for it as Long Beach State went up 12-10, but then Loyola took the next 2 points, and eventually Loyola didn't really have match point, and Sotiris Chiapanis had the last 2 kills as Long Beach State took the fifth set 17-15. It was such an epic match, and honestly, props to Loyola. They really came to play as Long Beach State was led by Clark Godbold. He came up big as well. He had 20 kills, he hit .395. Sotiris Chiapanis had 15 kills. The biggest thing for Long Beach State, well, 2 big things for Long Beach State, was Nathan Harlan, who had 9 kills off the bench. And then Shane Holdaway and Simon Torwey, their middle blockers, had a combined 21 kills, and they did not have 1 hitting error. So I don't know what it was. I said this in my video preview of Loyola versus Long Beach State that expect Long Beach State to utilize their middles in Shane Holdaway and Simon Torwey, and expect Long Beach State to also serve the ball tough. I mean, granted, Long Beach State only had 4 aces, but they served that ball really tough. And Sotiris Chiapanis, if you've seen him play, the dude also does really good in terms of serving the ball. He had 3 aces in the win. He also had 9 digs, and he had 4 blocks as well. So for Long Beach State, it was just a big night for them, and they narrowly escaped the upset. Meanwhile, Loyola was led by Parker Van Buren, who had 28 kills, and he had a hitting percentage of .479. Cole Schlotthauer had 19 kills, while Colton Brooks had 6 kills. The problem with Loyola was that they were too two-dimensional. They only had a 2-headed monster. They didn't really get like the middle involved, as it was just Parker, then Cole, then Parker. It's not really a recipe for success. Dan Mangan had 48 assists to go along with 10 digs, as Loyola hit .363. Now, normally when you have those numbers, you're going to be winning matches, but unfortunately, you're facing Long Beach State, the 3rd best team in the nation, and sadly, they just were a little bit better. And Long Beach State's blocking really started to pick up just because at first Loyola was just having a field day in the block department, but then Long Beach State started getting better and better and better as the match went on. So overall, for Loyola, my takeaway for them is they have a great team, and I don't think they played that bad of a match. And coming off of that loss to Concordia, I thought they were going to get blown back. And this is no disrespect to them and John Hawks' team. I just thought that Long Beach State being back at home, Loyola playing the second of a back-to-back, and Long Beach State having 8 days to rest and prepare for the Ramblers, I thought that Long Beach State would have had a little bit better of a night than most of the opponents that Loyola has played. But for the most part, Loyola held their own. I actually caught up with Parker Van Buren of Loyola as he talked about the loss and what it meant to play Long Beach State and what his team is going to do to get better. All right, Parker. Obviously, this was a thrilling match. 5-setter with the number 3 team in the nation. You fell a little short, but it was a phenomenal match. What were some positives you could take away from this match and from this West Coast road trip?
I would say one of the main positives is I'm super proud of the team. I'm really proud of how we battled. Just being with my boys and being able to take a good team like Long Beach State to 5. Fell a little short, big bummer, but there were so many positives. I mean, I thought we played really well, which was good. Here and there, some plays obviously didn't go the way we wanted them to. Discipline stuff, but as a whole, I was proud of the way we battled, and I thought that Long Beach State has a great team, and we did too, and we just came short this time.
In addition to your big night, Cole had 19 kills, and you and he were the two-headed monster. What can you say about Cole and your chemistry with one another?
Cole's steady. I mean, he keeps me grounded, I would say. He's always got my back. He's always telling me that. He's the most steady head on the team. He's always there for a kill. You can always count on him. Doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He's just a real steady guy, and it helps everyone on the team, but me specifically, quite a bit when I'm back there serving, when I'm hitting, everything like that.
Now, it took you a little while to get hot, but you eventually finished with 28 kills. You hit 479. Tell me, against some of those big, tall players on Long Beach, what did it feel like going up against some of those big, tall guys and those talented athletes?
Yeah, they got some really big middles, and it was a fun challenge trying to hit around and over them because they got meaty paws and they were touching up a lot of the balls that I was swinging. So it was a great challenge, and I'm glad that I rose to the task.
Now, next week begins MIVA play for you all. It seems like the MIVA is kind of wide open as Ball State's kind of still figuring things out. Ohio State has a crucial weekend in the Big 12 or Big 10 Pac-12 Challenge, and then you all are just coming off of a tough loss, and then Lewis is underrated, and then you still got the other teams in the conference.
Yep.
What's it going to take to topple the MIVA and come out as the tournament champion?
It's going to be difficult. I mean, we haven't done it in a while, and for good reason. There are always solid teams and solid players in MIVA. This is the year to do it. I believe we can. We're going to have to play our best volleyball the entire season, but especially at the end when it comes tournament time. We want to be in the best position we can, so the season is going to be crucial, but we're looking forward to it.
And then next week you have Lindenwood and McKendree, if I'm not mistaken.
It might be Lindenwood Quincy, but
yeah, I think that's it. So
okay.
Next game, regardless, is Lindenwood. Scrappy team. They have a few wins here and there. What's it going to take down Lindenwood?
Just really disciplined gameplay, sticking to what we know. If we play our game, we'll be able to handle them, I believe. We're going to be good blocking. We're going to have to be good in and out of the system. And I believe that we can beat any team in the MIVA if we just stay calm, play our game, move on to the next play.
So that was my post-game interview with Parker Van Buren. Okay, so correction from that interview. Loyola plays Quincy at Quincy, then they play Lindenwood. So my apologies for that. I'm sorry if I messed it up, so there was that. Something for Long Beach State is that Long Beach State was not at full strength as, yes, they had some guys still playing, but for Long Beach, they had some guys that were still battling illness. Alan Knipe said that his libero, Mason Briggs, was battling dehydration, and the poor dude was just fortunate to get out of that match in one piece. So I actually asked Alan Knipe about that and about also a couple other questions, with one of which being the substitution for Nathan Harlan. So here are my questions for Alan Knipe in the press conference from Long Beach State. And then Alan, obviously that second set, it was quite close as Loyola was actually up like 15-11, and then you made the substitution for Nathan for Spencer. What was going through your mind when you made that sub for one of your better players, and what happened with Spencer the rest of the way?
Well, absolutely nothing the rest of the way with Spencer. Nathan just came in and played really well, and you're not going to change it up. You're going with a hot hand. And what I really wanted is that we were down a few, and I really wanted Nathan's serve. Everything else was a bonus in that particular set. I thought he passed well. He played great defense, and he gave us some offense, but he got us back up in that set. We took the lead on his serve, and we just rode that momentum through the set. So, we talk all the time. It's not about who starts matches. It's about who finishes matches. And we have plenty of guys in our gym right now It took a couple of years to kind of get back out of the craziness we're all in to have some depth, but we feel like we have some depth, and we're going to use it. We've already used a couple of guys off the bench in Canada. We used different guys at Penn State. People are going to see some faces, and I have no problem using guys at pretty much every spot we have in the gym.
And then, Coach, as Clark just mentioned, the middles were very efficient. No hitting errors, 21 kills combined, a hitting percentage of .636 between the two. What can you say about the middles, and is this the most efficient you've seen the middles up to this point?
Probably. It's certainly something that we've been pushing in practice. It wasn't like we just threw on the light switch today, and try to go a lot of middle. We've been trying to have a big presence in the middle of the court, front row and back row, and without having that pull away from what Clark gets on the right and what our lefts get. But it's rare that it kind of balances out, that the numbers are so even, and so just the distribution kind of works out to be so perfect. You love that, but there's certain nights that some guys are just feeling it. Well, tonight was one of those nights offensively for the middles. First of all, to have your middles hit those numbers and hit those percentages on those kind of numbers means you're passing the ball very, very well. I thought he did a great job steady, but you got to give a lot of credit. Mason had been sick most of the week and fairly dehydrated, and he was battling just to get through the match without cramping, to the point that he.
I was going to say he's massaging his leg.
Yeah, he's not hurt at all. He's just coming off of being sick for a while and got better, and then kind of had a little bit of a bout of it again, and he just grinded through it. So he was just dehydrated and feeling it, and so we didn't have that. You didn't have the exact same personality of Mason tonight on there, because I think he was just trying to get through the match, and that is what I'm so proud about with Nathan and Spencer when he was in there, and Soto's, is their ability to pick up some of the slack that he carries for us, because he carries such an important piece of our serve receive, both prep, talking, communicating, and tonight was one of those nights he was just trying to get through the match.
So as I just mentioned, Mason Briggs was not 100%, as the poor dude was battling illness. He was dehydrated, and I can't wait to see him 100%. I hope he does get 100%. It's not anything COVID-related, otherwise we wouldn't have seen him. And the fact that the dude is basically playing the flu game, or playing with the flu, and he's playing the game, is absolutely amazing. So for Spencer Olivier, he finished the match with 4 kills, but he also had 6 errors, which I imagine that could have been a red flag for Alan Knipe to sub in for Nathan Harlan. But as he said, it's not how you start matches, it's how you finish matches. And Nathan was serving very tough. Nathan honestly stepped up off the bench. The dude contributed 9 kills, and he had a hitting percentage of .286. And he also chipped in 7 digs as well. So for him, he was kind of an unsung hero. The middle blockers were also an unsung hero. Long Beach State obviously has Spencer Olivier and Sotiris Chiapanis and Clark Godbold, but when those middles are just on it, because those middles were just putting down the ball quickly. Simon Torrey was going boom, 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 boom when Aiden Knipe was sending him the ball. So when those middles are on their A game, Shane Holdaway, 8 kills, he hit 500. Simon Torrey, 13 kills off of 17 attempts for a hitting percentage of .675. It's very, very good. And honestly, Long Beach State's biggest key is not only their pin hitters on the left and right side, but their middles as well. And Aiden Knipe obviously does a great job setting those boys up. And honestly, that is definitely going to be a factor for Long Beach State going forward. Just because Long Beach State could have any one of those players from Godbold, Olivier, or Chiapanis have big nights. But when the middles are on, they're a force to be reckoned with. And Knipe also said that they also have other middle blockers like Darius McRaven, Aiden Gross, Grant Maroki. They are very deep in the middle blocker position. It's not just 2 middle blockers. They have other middle blockers that can challenge them in practice, and that could also make a difference in terms of like serving the ball, or in terms of like getting a side out or anything of that sort. So for Long Beach State, this just goes to show how deep they can be. This isn't last year's team, and I think for this week, it's going to be quite the challenge. I also asked Alan about the matchup against UCLA and what it's going to take to win, but he just wanted to process the win over Loyola, just because when you're coming in, or when you're, obviously it was an emotional match, it was a 5-set thriller, and for Long Beach State, they obviously just want to rest up, lick their wounds, and then prepare for UCLA. Alan Knipe said he didn't want to downplay the UCLA matches just because he knows how good UCLA is going to be, and I'm sure they watched film on them based on the Pac-12 Big Ten Challenge, just because playing Penn State is no easy feat, especially on the road. So for Long Beach State, back to them, they really showed their depth in this win over Loyola, and they showed their grit and resiliency. And that's not really easy just because Loyola is a good team. It's just that they need to have that third hitter. They need to get the middle involved more. It just cannot be, they just can't be two-dimensional. Because if so, then it's not going to be a recipe for success for the Ramblers. And they're going to be at the mercy of some of the other teams in the conference, like the Ohio States, the Ball States, the Lewises, then the list goes on and on. So For Loyola, it's a live and learn moment, and they're definitely going to learn from this match. Those 2 sets that they won, it could have gone either way. They obviously did a great job of coming up big when it mattered most. The first set, they almost relinquished a 24-21 lead, but fortunately they had Cole Schlotthauer, who had a big-time swing from the left side to give him that set. But other than that, they also missed 21 serves. That's another big thing for Loyola. They cannot miss 21 serves and expect to win. And I want to say that a few of those serves came in that 5th set. If they don't miss those serves, I know it's being picky, but if they don't miss those serves, it's a whole different perspective. And yes, you obviously have to serve tough, but you just can't give a team like Long Beach State free points. It just doesn't work that way. Long Beach State's going to take those free points and run with it. So all in all, that is that for the Loyola Long Beach State men's volleyball match that I covered on Friday. It was a great match, and I did a recap video on it, a short little 2-minute plus video on it, so definitely check that out as well. So now we're going to get on into the AVCA coaches poll. So starting with the top 15, 15 through 11 consists of Cal State Northridge, or CSUN, at 15, UC Santa Barbara at 14, Loyola at 13, USC at 12, and Ohio State at 11. 10 through 6 consists of BYU at 10, Ball State at 9, Stanford at 8, UC Irvine at 7, and Pepperdine at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Grand Canyon at 5, UCLA at 4, Penn State at 3, Long Beach State at 2, and your number 1 team, and still number 1 team in the National Collegiate Coaches Poll, is Hawaii. So we had a lot of movement. We had UCLA going down from number 2 all the way down to number 4. Long Beach State rose to number 2. And then Penn State rose to number 3. Grand Canyon jumped from number 9 all the way up to number 5. Pepperdine went down to number 6. UC Irvine stayed at 7, which I thought was surprising. Stanford was bumped down to 8 after the loss to CSUN. Ball State got bumped down to 9. BYU jumped into the top 10. Ohio State jumped 2 spots. USC went down a couple spots. Loyola went down a spot. UC Santa Barbara went up a spot. Lewis left the top 15 just because that loss to George Mason was completely bad. And then CSUN entered the top 15 after that amazing win over Stanford. Though the loss to Vanguard does not really do them any wonders. So that is that for the AVCA Division 1-2 men's volleyball coaches poll. We're going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we have Week 6 to preview of the NCAA men's volleyball season, and we also have some NVA news, and we have the AVP schedule, and we have the NCAA women's volleyball notable transfers. So keep it locked here. You're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and centers. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely do check out all of our amazing shows, such as The Show That Never Sleeps with Pierre Moss and Harrison Glazer, Sin City Sports with Cale Henderson, and Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick, which always goes on 1 hour primarily before this show goes live. With that being said, let's go into segment number 2 of Set Point. So we have to go over and preview Week 6 matches of the NCAA men's volleyball season. So we'll start off on Wednesday. Wednesday and Friday. Number 7 UC Irvine and Pepperdine squaring off against number 6 Pepperdine. Wednesday's match will be at Pepperdine at 7 p.m., while Friday's match will be at UC Irvine, also at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So the Anteaters have lost 3 in a row. They started off the season really hot. They won their first 7 matches, and then against Against BYU, they lost that one in 5. Then they lost to GCU both times in 4 and 5. So now they take on a Pepperdine team that is also coming off a loss to UC Santa Barbara. So for the Gauchos, or not the Gauchos, the Anteaters, they got to reestablish their offense. They are taking on a very talented Pepperdine team who I think is going to be quite the battle for them. I really think Pepperdine is going to be itching to get back into the W column, and it's a great test for both these teams. I really think that UC Irvine and Pepperdine can put on a great show. UC Irvine obviously has that high talented offense with Hilir Heno as well as Francesco Sani, but it just can't be those two. They have to establish that third head on the three-headed monster. And also for what's their face, Pepperdine, it just can't be Jalen Jasper. They have to have other players stepping up, like Jacob Steele. Only then will they be able to topple UC Irvine. It's not going to be easy, but for the Waves and for the Anteaters, this is a crucial series for both teams. Whichever team can go 2-0 will definitely have some momentum going into the following week. And for Pepperdine, it's not too... Something that's coming up is conference play. It's only a matter of time before they kick off conference play, just because they'll also see some of their brethren, like GCU and USC, kicking off MPSF conference play. So for Pepperdine, they're kind of going to need to get their matches fine-tuned up, and they're going to have to make sure that they don't possibly mess up along the way, just because Pepperdine is a good team, but that loss to Santa Barbara kind of leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And I really think Pepperdine has a deep team, and Jalen Jasper is a fantastic player, but the MPSF is looking deeper by the minute. Grand Canyon is proving that they deserve to be undefeated. UCLA obviously had a tough loss against Penn State, but they're still up there in talent, obviously with all those All-Americans. USC is scrappy. Stanford, obviously they had a blip on the radar against Northridge. So overall, for Pepperdine, they're going to have to cross their T's and dot their I's. Also, can't forget about BYU. That team is also legit as well. Then we have on Thursday, the MIVA kicks off, or MIVA, as Parker Van Buren calls it, as Lewis hits the road to Muncie to take on number 9 Ball State. That's a 6 p.m. Central start time match. So for Lewis, that loss to George Mason was not good, as they're going to play a Ball State team, obviously coming off of its first ranked win of the season. For Ball State, they just cannot underestimate Lewis. Obviously, Lewis is underrated, and I think for Lewis, that loss to George Mason, I think, is their wake-up call. That has to be their wake-up call, just because if they are struggling to beat a team like that, they're going to really struggle in MIVA play against some of the stiffer competition. I think they still have a shot to win the MIVA, but they're kind of a dark horse to win the tournament, let alone the regular season title, just because you look at how deep the conference is with Ball State, Loyola. Obviously, they took Long Beach State to 5, even though they went 0 for 2 in that West Coast Conference swing. And then Ball State's still trying to figure things out. Ohio State got its first big win of the season. So for the Buckeyes, obviously that's a big win. But back to Ball State, they really are going to. They kind of have to reestablish themselves as well. I think they do have their whatchamacallit, their second big time hitter, their second big hitter to Caleb Jennis, just because they know they can't be one dimensional with Caleb Jennis, just like how Lewis was one dimensional with Tyler Mitchum last season. Then also on Thursday and on Friday, we have my matches / series of the week. Number 2, Long Beach State taking on number 4, UCLA. Thursday's match will be an 8 p.m. Pacific start time, so for those on the East Coast, I feel bad for you. But Long Beach State will be away at UCLA, while Friday's match will be at Long Beach State. So for UCLA, they're going to have to pick themselves off the mat, and they're going to have to play some darn good volleyball against this Long Beach State team. If UCLA wants to have any shot of winning, they're going to have to take away the middle blocker, they have to take away the middle from Long Beach State, which means they're also going to have to serve very tough, and they're going to have to block really well as well, and they're going to have to pass really well too. So I know it sounds far-fetched and it sounds obvious, but it really is the truth. You have to serve and pass well, and you have to pretty much play perfect volleyball against Long Beach State. Obviously, the moment is going to be big for both these teams as, again, these two teams have been playing each other for the past 10 seasons. Obviously, this match is always built as a big-time matchup, regardless of how good UCLA is, regardless of how good Long Beach State is. I think it's going to be a barn burner between these two teams on both nights. I will be at this match on Friday against Long Beach when Long Beach State plays UCLA. And it's going to be quite the matchup. I really want to see if I could try to get UCLA's coach John Speraw as a head coach or as a special guest. But we'll see. Time will tell. That's that for Thursday's matchups and for Friday's matchups. Then we jump to Saturday. We have Lewis hitting the road to Columbus to take on number 11 Ohio State in the Covalli Center. So if Ohio State remembers correctly, Lewis was the team that knocked them out of the MIVA tournament as Lewis wound up reverse sweeping Ohio State, which was definitely a heartbreaker for the Buckeyes. Just because they worked hard to get that number 5 seed, and they fell short after taking the first 2 sets. So for Ohio State, they're going to have to prove that they deserve to be ranked number 11. It's certainly not going to be the easiest, just because Lewis is a veteran when it comes to the MIVA. They're not as good as they were in the past, but I really think that Lewis is not going to be a walk in the park. I think they're definitely underrated, and I definitely think that they're still trying to figure things out without Tyler Mitchum, but I really think that this is going to be a matchup definitely to watch for, just because this is going to really prove to see if Ohio State's returning players are all that in a bag of chips. Just because for Ohio State, I think they're a solid team. They took Penn State to 4. They beat Princeton both times. They took Grand Canyon to 5, for goodness sake. At Grand Canyon. Or no, not at Grand Canyon. At George Mason. So for the Buckeyes, this is their moment to start off hot in the MIVA. So if they can start off 2-0 this week, I think the Buckeyes have it made, and it would be a great start for them, just because it's only going to get tougher in the MIVA, and I really think that the Buckeyes have potential this season. It's just all about putting that potential together, and Ohio State needs to find that third hitter, just like what's their face, Pepperdine and UC Irvine. So I really think Ohio State can beat Lewis, but Lewis is not going to be a walk in the park. So we'll see what happens. As Larry B also says, Ohio State is a solid team, and I really think I really like their coach, Kevin Birch. I really think he's done an excellent job taking over as head coach, and I really think he's done wonders for that team. As Mike Pat pops in the chat room, he says, "I would stick around, but I have to get set for tomorrow." Oh God. Yes, I got your point. So, yeah, please do see yourself out, buddy. Sorry. Dad joke right there. Then we also have a matchup on Sunday that's noteworthy. George Mason at NJIT. That's a 2 p.m. Eastern start time. I should also mention that the Ohio State-Lewis match is a 7 p.m. Eastern start time. But back to George Mason, NJIT. So, obviously Sunday is Super Bowl Sunday, but we don't care about that. Except unless it's on this show, but I digress. But George Mason, NJIT, now it's not the most glamorous matchup. It's not this matchup that screams prime time, or this match should be played on national TV. But remember, George Mason and NJIT, they went 5 the first time around, and it was an intense match, and George Mason nearly pulled off that first win of the season, but NJIT just narrowly escaped, and this is NJIT's chance to prove that that first loss was not a fluke. It's going to be at NJIT, and I really think those Highlanders can prove themselves in the EIVA. I just think they kind of got dealt a bad start in the first part of their non-league schedule. And for them, every EIVA match is precious, just because you don't want to get matched up against Penn State. I mean, eventually you're going to have to take on Penn State, but the goal is to make sure you're not playing Penn State until the final. Just in case, well, last year is a good example. NJIT did an excellent job of avoiding Penn State until the final. They were the 3 seed, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think they were the 3 seed, and they were behind Charleston, and eventually the NJIT advanced to the final, where they fell short to Princeton, which upset Penn State in the final. But for NJIT, I still have faith in NJIT. I think they are an underrated team. It's just that they have to get that breakout victory. They have to prove to everyone that the Jersey grit is real. And I really think that they can beat George Mason. But now, am I saying George Mason's going to lose? No. I think George Mason is starting to get it together. They did get that one win of the season. It would have been interesting to see them going into this matchup with no wins, but getting that first win of the season is always a relief, just so people can just let up on you and not give you the whole, my shower curtain has more wins than you do, or my website has more W's than you do. I'm just saying. But I really think that George Mason, I think they have some solid players like Omar Hoyos, Hoyos, Omar Hoyos, and a bunch of other talents. And George Mason, obviously, they're the host side of the NCAA men's volleyball tournament this season, or at least the Final Four. But overall, I think George Mason, I think they're starting to get it together. Between the NJIT match and the Lewis match, those are their 2 best matches, just because they've played some stiff competition like Ohio State, Grand Canyon, Long Beach State, and UCLA, but they obviously did not come out on top. I think, but those matchups right there, they definitely helped toughen George Mason up. I would go as far as to say, if they did not play those matches, I don't know if they beat Lewis. But for George Mason, playing tough opponents, they are the prime example of being rewarded for playing tough opponents. Because eventually you will find that matchup against a ranked team that isn't as good as the other competition that you faced, and you will eventually emerge victorious, if that makes sense in any sort of way. But for George Mason, I don't think they're anyone to underestimate. They have some solid guys on that team of theirs. I think that they can possibly, hence the word possibly challenge the EIVA, just because, well, the EIVA is stacked, yes, but again, they have some good players on that team. Jack Bowles, he's phenomenal. He led the team in kills last year with 348. Omar Hoyos, like I said, he's solid. Troy McDonald, Zach Talamoa, they're both great setters. Lucas Middle, he also was a solid middle blocker for them last year. So for George Mason, I really think that the Patriots can at least challenge NJIT. If I had money, I'd probably put it on NJIT, but don't count out those Patriots just yet. You just can't count out George Mason. You just really can't. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in New Jersey. So that is that for the NCAA men's volleyball Week 6 matchups to watch for. Before I move on from the NCAA men's volleyball portion of the show, I have to go over the undefeated teams remaining in NCAA men's volleyball, Division 1 and 2. And those teams are Hawaii, which is no real surprise, Long Beach State, which isn't really too much of a surprise. I mean, obviously Penn State pushed them. Loyola obviously pushed them to the limit, but they came out on top. Grand Canyon, which is a whopping 10-0 after an impressive pair of victories over UC Irvine. Charleston, which has not really played anybody. And then this last team, Benedict, which just kicked off its season, as they hail from the SIAC conference, or the SIAC. But they've only played 2 matches, so it was something courtesy of Off the Block. And I definitely do have to mention that Benedict was a part of the whole undefeated club. So there are 5 remaining teams that are undefeated. Unfortunately for Loyola, they kind of got booted out of the club, as well as UCLA. I honestly did not expect UCLA to be out of the undefeated club, but I digress on that. So that is that for all the undefeated teams and all your matchups to watch for in NCAA Division 1 and 2. So now, moving on from NCAA men's volleyball and going into professional men's volleyball, we have some NVA news to go over. Oh yes, we have NVA news. So I guess I should all tell you this. I'm actually doing NVA previews for the NVA, as basically I'm going to be doing up previews for the NVA. I've already got one preview done. I'm not going to say which team it is. Y'all will have to find out. And I've got another preview in the works. So basically I'm going to be doing 2 previews a week, or sending off 2 previews a week, and then leading up to the NVA seasons. And the NVA season, I imagine, will start in April, as I have 2. Here's how it's going to go. So I would have send off 2 previews this week, then 2 previews the following week on the 12th all the way to the 18th, then the 19th through the 25th, another 2 previews, then another 2 previews, then another 2 previews, then another 2 previews, then do a little bit of a story on the 19th through the 25th, and then I'm planning on doing a breakdown of the conferences and the realigned divisions and automatic playoff entries. And I imagine, this is my guess, that the week of April 2nd all the way to April 8th starts the NVA season in 2023. That is just my guess. I am not officially guaranteeing it. The schedule has not been released yet. It'll hopefully be released soon, but that's besides the point. I just want to get that out there just because keep on the lookout for any previews, as, once again, I've sent out one preview to the head honcho, or one of the head honchos, and then another preview is about to be in the works. I am practically done with it. I just need to do the final draft, then send it off, and then I'm done with my previews. And who knows? I might also have some, I actually want your opinion. I actually would like your opinion. Should I do Zoom interviews with, some of the coaches and maybe some of the players? I definitely want to, get the NVA more involved and maybe have more content. So we'll see what happens going forward. I would not mind doing Zoom interviews. I think it would be awesome, but time will tell. So now let's jump on into that NVA news, because I, Teran Rodriguez, am going to be your one-stop shop for all things NVA news. So this news came last Wednesday. So the NVA released the following statement, and it's not the best news, at least if you're a fan of some of these teams. So this news came, like I said, it came on Friday, and they announced on Friday that there was an NVA 2023 season update. As we move into the 2023 season, there are a few changes that we want to make you, the fans, aware of. As with many young leagues, high team/franchise turnover is an unfortunate reality, and the NVA is no exception. The NVA will have a new look in regards to teams competing in the league this season, and those changes are as follows. The Dallas Tornadoes, Seattle Sasquatch, and Colorado Kraken will all not be participating in the 2023 season. With that being said, stay tuned, as we will be announcing 3 new teams for the 2023 season. We are excited for these new franchises and markets to join the league. So if you're someone in the Dallas area or the Seattle area or the Colorado area, I'm very sorry to tell you, you don't have an NVA team this season. I don't know why those teams departed. I actually do know, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on the air. So it's a little bit of a wait-and-see process, and you'll probably hear the explanation of why those teams aren't playing this year from Nick England, but I digress. So that was that bit of news right there from last Wednesday. Jumping on over to the NVA news for today, it is officially official that the NVA has announced that the Philadelphia Founders are a new team in the NVA. So this was the statement from owner Andrew Lee. Philadelphia is known as home to some of the most passionate sports fans in the world, like the Eagles. I am grateful for the opportunity this league has previously afforded me as GM for the Chicago Untouchables, but I am ecstatic to move forward and bring the city of brotherly love a professional men's volleyball team. The Philadelphia Founders are honored for the opportunity to compete in the NVA and to embody the passion and grit that the city of Philadelphia demands. The 2000 NVA season is coming. Join the revolution. So that was from owner Andrew Lee of the Philadelphia Founders, the former owner of the Chicago Untouchables. So I broke this news early back in December. It's great that we're seeing more NVA teams. It is a bummer that we no longer get to see the the Dallas Tornadoes, the Colorado Kraken, and the Seattle Sasquatch. But I will also say this. I think that's incredible that we're getting more new teams. We'll see what happens with those 3 teams that I just mentioned, but that is the first of 3 teams. I actually know the other 2 teams, but unfortunately you're just going to have to wait for the NVA to put out some news on Instagram. But definitely do follow the NVA on Instagram for more information about some of the new NVA rules and regulations that's going to be coming out. And make sure you are following SetPoint on Twitter at set_pointie. I'll be providing the Twitter updates on there as well, so keep a lookout for that. Alright, so that is that for the NVA news right there. So now we have to jump on into some AVP action. So I want to say this was like last Friday, if not last weekend, as the AVP just released its schedule for the 2023 season, and oh baby, it is about time we got this schedule. I was wondering if there was going to be an AVP, but of course there was going to be an AVP. So this was released on Friday. No, it was released on Friday, and here is the AVP schedule. So for those that are new to SetPoint and you don't know what AVP is, it's basically professional beach volleyball. So, by the way, the AVP will be celebrating its 40th anniversary tour, which I think is awesome. So, congratulations to the AVP on celebrating 40 seasons, and I'm excited to see what Season 40 can bring for the AVP. So, their first tournament will be... Remember, but before I continue, there are actually 3 types of tournaments. There's the Pro Series tournament, the Tour Series tournament, and the Gold Series tournament. The Gold Series tournament is the big one, and the AVP Championships is going to be held on September 22nd and 23rd, but more on that later. Anyway, so March 17th through the 19th is the first AVP tournament of the 2023 season. It's going to be held in Miami, Florida. I think that's the perfect place to hold a beach volleyball tournament. The following tournament will be in New Orleans on April 14th through the 16th, which I think is also cool. Then the following tournament after that is going to be in Huntington Beach from May 19th all the way through May 21st. I went to the tournament this past fall, and it was awesome. So, kind of interesting that they moved the tournament to May as opposed to moving it to, like, November. But I digress. All those tournaments that I just mentioned are Pro Series tournaments. Now, Tour Series will be in Virginia Beach from June 9th all the way through June 11th. Then also in the Tour Series, we have the Denver tournament, which is going to be from June 30th all the way through July 2nd, which I think is amazing. Then we have the Hermosa Beach Open, as that's another Pro Series tournament from July 7th all the way through July 9th. Then, also on July 7th through July 9th, we have the Waupaca, for those that are good, for those that don't know, Waupaca is in Wisconsin. So, the Waupaca Open will also be the Tour Series tournament, also on July 7th through July 9th. Then, the Gold Series starts for the AVP, as Atlanta has its tournament from August 4th all the way to August 6th. Then the granddaddy of them all, the Manhattan Beach Open, August 18th through August 20th. That's another Gold Series tournament. That's the big one right there. That's the one that everyone is going to want to go all out for and probably participate in, if healthy. Then the Chicago Open for the Gold Series tournament is on September 1st through the 3rd. Another big tournament, in my opinion, and I think the Chicago Open is another big-time tournament, and depending on what the Gold Series race is to the AVP Championships could depend on how crucial that is. Remember, Taryn Cloth and Kristen Nuss came up big in that tournament. They won that tournament to lock up a tournament spot in the AVP Championships, which they won as well. So that's something to make note of. Then the AVP Championships, which is a location to be announced soon, will be on September 22nd through the 23rd. And then their last tournament is the Laguna Beach Open from October 13th through the 15th. So a couple of tournaments that I hope to go to, if there is any obligations, is the Huntington Beach Open and then the Laguna Beach Open. If there is not one bit of news, or if there's nothing getting in the way of me attending those tournaments, I will for sure go to the Huntington Beach Open. I will for sure go to the Laguna Beach Open. Now, the Manhattan Beach Open might be a little, how do you want to say this? A little out of my location range. But I still want to go to that. I imagine it's going to be super packed, because if the Huntington Beach Open was packed in the stands, I imagine the Manhattan Beach Open is going to be quite the zoo. But I for sure want to go to the Huntington Beach and Laguna Beach Open. Guarantee it. I promise y'all I will try to go to those tournaments. If there is no NVA events, I'm for sure going to that Huntington Beach Open. So we'll see what happens. We still need to get the NVA schedule released. Even I don't know the NVA schedule. All right, so that is that for the AVP schedule for the season. It's not a whole lot of tournaments as compared to last year, but still a good amount of locations. There is a grand total of 12 tournaments, and I think that's better just because, yes, more is great, but it's kind of taxing for like the tournament for the players and how players sometimes put themselves at risk for injury, just because we have seen a couple of withdrawals due to injury. We've seen some players miss out on tournaments that we would have liked to have seen, which would force their partner to find a new partner before the tournament, and that would just mess up the chemistry and cohesion from said player that had the original partner that they lost to injury. So that is that for the AVP portion of the show. Then we have, to close out this episode of Set Point, is the NCAA Women's Volleyball transfer news. So we haven't had too many transfers, but we've had some notable transfers. So we have to start off on last Tuesday. So Temi Thomas-Ailara announced on Twitter that she is officially committed and she's excited to continue her athletic and academic career at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And that is huge right there, just because she was the rock of Northwestern. She was the biggest standout for Northwestern out there, and she was definitely a catalyst for the Cats. But now she will be heading down to Madison to play for Wisconsin, and I think it's going to be huge for Wisconsin, just because that adds another top player to their offensive arsenal. And Kelly Sheffield obviously has to be excited to have her on the team, just because the two have been opponents, but now they're going to be on the same side. And then also you also have Sarah Franklin, who returns for the Badgers as well. And then they've got other players as well, like Devin Robinson, and then Anna Smrek is going to be returning, unless we see something else that pops up. But overall, I think Wisconsin could be back in the Final Four. Last year was a tough year for them, but I think with Temi Thomas-Ailara and all those other returning players, I think the Badgers will be something to watch for. Then on Wednesday, we have Janasia Moore transferring to Tennessee. So she transfers from Ohio State, as she had 362 kills, as that was actually good for second on the team, behind Emily Londot. So for Tennessee getting Janasia Moore, I think that's huge, just because Natalie Hayward obviously leaving is tough, but Moore definitely provides more offense, and that's no pun intended. It definitely gives them firepower offensively, just because Tennessee, they're a good team, but they're not the greatest team. Can they keep up with the Kentuckys, the Floridas, and all these other teams that are bulking up in terms of their talent? Then we got 3 transfers today, as this was kind of an interesting transfer, as Lena Perugini, I think that's how it's pronounced, Lena Perugini has transferred from Coastal Carolina to Penn State for her final year of eligibility. So this is quite the interesting transfer. She had 463 digs, but for Penn State, they do return their libero from last season. So for Penn State, they have an interesting decision to make with Perugini, but I think she could get some playing time as a defensive specialist. What I really like about her transfer to Penn State is that her 10-year-old dream is come true. As she said, 10-year-old Lena's dream is coming true, and she's beyond grateful that she is going to be getting this opportunity, and she can't wait to come home to Pennsylvania and live out her childhood dream as a Nittany Lion. And obviously Penn State has been loading up on transfers, talented transfers for that matter, and I think for Penn State, I think they're going to be quite something to watch for in Katie Schumacher-Cawley's second season with the Nittany Lions. Then earlier today, or I wouldn't say earlier today, but after that transfer, we had Jess Robinson transferring from Michigan as she transfers over to Duke. So she is a middle blocker. She's a graduate student, and she had 239 kills, which was good for second on the team, but she hit .438, which was very efficient, and she led the team in blocks with 120. So Duke was a solid team last season, but they just got even more solid with Jess Robinson added to the fold. And I think that's going to benefit them in the long run, just because Duke has to contend with the likes of Louisville, Pitt, Georgia Tech, Florida State, all those other talented teams. Miami, that's another good team out there. So for Duke, this is a great step in the right direction, and getting Jess Robinson is big time for them. And then the last transfer that I had, now this is kind of an interesting transfer, was Ellie Snook. She actually transfers from Portland State to USC. She also is a graduate student, as all these players are graduate students. Or all these transfers are graduate students. But Ellie Snook, back to her stats from Portland State last year, 539 digs, 4.57 digs per set, and she had 43 aces, which was second on the Vikings. So USC, this is the interesting problem with USC, though. USC has Gala Trubint, who was their freshman libero from this season. She returns. And they also got Ellie Geohagen from San Diego State, as she had 385 digs, and she also had 3.9 digs per set. And I messed up Ellie Geohagen's stats. She had 385 digs last season, and she had 3.29 digs per set, and she also had 31 aces. So this is going to be quite the interesting battle for the libero spot. If anything, Snook is probably going to be a defensive specialist in the rotation. But I don't know what's going to happen with Geohagen, Snook, and Trubint, as honestly, for USC, they're getting all of these defensive specialists and liberos, but they don't really have the firepower. Obviously, they're going to lose Skylar Fields to graduation, but they do have a young core of hitters. So this is kind of interesting for USC going forward into the season. I mean, I'm not going to knock it. I think Ellie Snook's stats are great, but Portland State wasn't on par with like the Penn States or the Wisconsins or the Texases or the San Diegos or the Louisvilles or anything of that sort. As we welcome David Sid Crooks in the chat room. But thank you for tuning in, my brother. But for USC, they've got the most interesting libero position trying to be figured out. And what are they going to do with the other two? What are they going to do with the other two players that aren't the libero for USC? That's kind of my big $1 million question. Who's going to be the libero, and who's going to be the defensive specialist, and who is going to be in the serving rotation, and also who is going to be the odd girl out? But it still remains to be seen. We'll see what happens, though. So that is that for all of the transfer news in the NCAA women's volleyball world. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for me to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen late at night or in the wee hours of the morning, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I really do appreciate you. Shout out to the chat room, such as Marcus Losgreat, Larry B, David the Crook, Mike Pat, and Adam Karnick. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you all for tuning in live. For everyone here at iSports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourself a great rest of the week. Enjoy the volleyball action. Like I said, I will be at Long Beach State on Friday to check out the UCLA Long Beach State men's volleyball match. It's sure to be a barn burner. definitely check out the updates and video clips I'll be posting on the Set Point Twitter account. I'll also see you Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. And also, once again, keep an eye out for all those NBA previews that I am doing for the NBA. Like I said, we've got one sent off, another is in the works, and then keep an eye out for some more content coming from Set Point outside of Spreaker. Until then, have a great week, and I'll see you on the other side. Peace!